and welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about drawing an eye, and the picture that I've chosen to copy from today is one off Pixabay, and this one's actually got the eye from the side, which we do all find quite tricky. You can actually see a little bit of the back of the eye on this one, but quite often we'll get it in a photograph where we've just got this part of the eye showing, and it feels very unnatural drawing it like that. But if that's how it is, then that's how you should draw it. But some of the same rules I'm going to talk about apply to drawing it from the front as well. So, you know, just really some very basic things to think about when you come to drawing an eye. So firstly, when we think about drawing an eye, we often think about this part here, or even just this shape here. But actually the eye is all of this here. So if you just think about it, think about where your socket is, feel your skull, feel underneath your eyebrow here, you'll be able to feel the rim or the edge of your eye socket there, and similarly above your cheekbone here, you'll be able to feel where it's soft, and that makes that cavity there where your eye socket is. So it's very large, and the eye itself, we're only seeing the front of it. It goes a long way back and it's much bigger than what we can actually see, and all the shape of that's determined by the skull, particularly here and here, makes some of the character of that person. And this applies to animals as well. Also with an animal, look at the whole socket and where the skull is lying and the nose and everything else. That's going to make the whole shape of the eye and make the character of that animal or person that you're drawing. So that's the first thing. Think about where the skull is and where the whole of that eye socket is and how big it is. Then of course everybody's lids are different, and again this is going to affect the character and also the age, because if you look in the mirror as you get older, you lose some elasticity in some of this, and some of your lids tend to come down more. In a baby that's much more open. So things like that you need to keep in mind as well. Look very carefully about where this crease is going, the crease between the eyelid and this under your brow here. I don't know if there's a specific name for that, I'm trying to think of one, but maybe not. So another thing that this one's affected by as well is makeup. I find it very difficult when you get a photograph with a lady with lots, or a gentleman in fact, with lots of makeup on. It alters the colours and the shadows and things, because you know it might be a lighter area, but then if it's covered with a very dark eyeshadow. This one's actually got eyeshadow on, so that makes it easier to see the actual natural colours and the tones and where the shadow is there. But they've got a lot of mascara on, so that's obviously making it a lot darker. So think about things like that. Is it dark because it's in shade, or is it dark because of the makeup? You might need to account for that. And look at all the different colours in there and where the light is hitting. I've talked about this before when drawing people and drawing faces in general. Think about where the light's hitting. Very often the light's coming from above. And it tends to hit where the skull is nearest to the surface of the skin, where it's sticking out. So here again on the brow bone, on the centre of the forehead, you often find a highlight where that light's hitting. Similarly, you often find highlights on the lower part of the lid here. Can you see we've got lots of highlights going across there? It's quite moist for one thing, but for another, again, the light's coming from above and it's hitting that little, if you think of it as a little ledge coming out there, just that little tiny bit there. So again, it's not one line along the bottom of your eye, there's two there, because there's a little kind of ledge, if you like. So that often catches the light, and people often put a highlight in the pupil, and if you look at this, there isn't one in the pupil at all. She's actually got a reflection of a window or something in her eye there, and how much detail you go into with that is really up to you. You might want to leave some of that out and just make a very simple highlight there. She's got lots of highlights down here as well, again because the light's coming from above, and where this skin comes out here onto a cheekbone, there's lots of highlights there, and again on this lid which comes out. So that's another thing to mention. A face is a 3D object, and it's going around the volume of the head, and the eye is as well. And this way, your face isn't flat like that. The eye isn't, let's imagine this is the face. It's not, if it was flat like that, the eye isn't across like this, completely flat. It's sitting on something that's not spherical, but that's voluminous and going both that way and that way. So think of these shapes going not just across and around that way, they're also going that way and that way. Okay, so I'll begin now and set off drawing this. If you're doing it from the front, obviously it's much easier to think about the measurements. In general, the gap between the eyes tends to be very similar to the width of the eye, so that's one good thing to have a look at. But measure carefully if you're not sure, particularly if you're doing a portrait where it has to be a likeness, it's of somebody and it's of them. 1 little millimetre either way can make a big difference to the character of a face, and 1 little line out of place can alter the character or make the character. So really look at your measurements. Although I don't measure very often, it's something I must do more often. If something looks wrong when you're halfway through, if it looks really wrong and you think that doesn't look like that person, have a go at measuring and seeing where maybe a measurement's out of line, because that could be where it is in your actual measuring, because that really makes a huge difference to the character of the person. So I'm going to begin now, and I'll set off. I'll just put that to one side, and I'll set off by making that first big sweeping shape of the overall shape of that socket. And like I say, because it's on the side, I thought it would be, you know, there's lots of videos of doing eyes from the front, and I thought I'd make a bit of a change and do one from the side. And we've got some lovely sweeping curves. So this pencil that I'm using here is a Graphitone, and it's a 4B medium, and as you can see there's a little brush on there because you can add water to this if you wanted to make some tone. I'm using it today so that it shows up well to the camera as opposed to just an ordinary pencil. So I've sort of put in that shape in there, if you can see that. We've got the eyebrow itself, which we can mark on. So break the shapes down as well, you know, look at that shape, the overall shape. Rather than setting off drawing every little hair like that, draw the shape of the whole eyebrow. And that more or less fits into there. And then we've got the shape of this part of the lid, and if you look at it there, it goes out and down. We will refine this later and make it a bit more, like I say, refined, but for now we'll just put those basic blocks in. And then we've got the side of the nose, and because of the way the photograph's taken, the nose is completely out of focus and highlighted, so we'll just leave that line there and we won't worry about anything that's to this side of it. So underneath that, look again at the measurements. This is slightly further down than that, and it's going up. So that's this next one here, this line here. I've perhaps not got it going steep enough. You know, we will change this as we go along. Then we have a gap. Down and round. And then she's got quite a few sort of little lines down here, but we won't put all those in. If you put too many of those lines in, you see what I mean, these lines here, you're going to age the person. If you overdo it with adding all that detail, you're going to make them look a lot older than they are. So be careful. You might want 1 or 2 of those in, but you might not want to put them all in. So at the moment that looks a very abstract shape, nothing much like a face at all, but you can see we've got those basic shapes in. So here, this shape across, right down, and you might want to sort of adjust it a little bit. It's going up more there than I have it, and down, and then this shape, and just keep going over those shapes, and you're just practicing, so it doesn't matter if you leave some of these lines. You can see there we've got a nice point here, so keep that in, and all these are going to help form the shape later on. So while we're at this stage, we want to really think about getting the shape of that eye in and where it is. And of course you might be using a much more finer pencil than this and able to spend a lot more time. In here we've got a little curve, so that's where the rest of this, so it's like I was saying before, your head's going away, around that way and that way, and it's curving over. So here it's curving over, but you can't see it without looking very, very carefully, and that's joining on to that. That's where the eye is joining. Now that's very, very faint. I'll put it there for now, but afterwards I'll probably make that line less obvious. But it just helps you think about where the shape is. And I'll put some shade on this as well. It's looking a bit too white. So like I said, that's a little lip there. So from there across. So the good thing about this type of pencil is, it's just a lump of graphite, is you can use it on its side to get lots of shade, or you can use the point to get more detail. So now look at where the shadows are and very, very roughly block those in. This part of the eye is in shadow. So although it's white, don't be painting it white or drawing it white, because it is in the shade. And then obviously the nose and this brow bone, feel your own brow bone, it casts a lot of shadow on this part of your face if the light's coming from up here. So when you're doing shadows like this, with using the side of your pencil, move your arm around. Sometimes it's easier to have your arm above, or move your paper around if that makes it easier. And just build up those tones. Look at where your very darkest areas are compared to your very lightest areas. Then you can start and look again at some of these shadows, at some of these shapes, and refine them quite a lot. Okay, so I'll start again at the top and start and put some of that detail in. I'm not going to draw every hair, but just get the direction of some of those hairs, and again they're going around. So if you look here, can you see how they're going around the corner? So get that feeling in with some very quick marks. And again, this is something that you might have to carefully observe whether the person plucks their eyebrows or not. This lady obviously does. Sometimes you're going to get them much more untidy than this, so just take a careful look at where those are all going. Then come down to the next bit and start and think about the shadow a bit more, and leaving this end where the highlight is. And use the line of your pencil to follow that line of where the face is moving, and that's going to make that volume and shape of the face all together. I seem to have covered a lot of that up with the eyelashes that aren't not covering it as much there. Can you see I've gone right up here with the eyelashes, I've gone over the top with them. So again, we'll just make that very dark under there, because that's where it's the darkest on the whole picture really. And that's going to help again get that shape. Now how much detail, how long you spend doing this is entirely up to you. You probably want to spend more longer than I do really carefully observing this, and maybe coming back with an eraser at the end and picking out some highlights. Look how far these eyelashes go in this direction before they start curling around here. And that line we put in earlier helps us see where they're attached. So it's much darker around here. She's got brown eyes, so they're quite dark. And this is very dark, the centre. Like I said, there's no highlight on that area. The highlights are all for the side here. And because we're seeing this eye from the side, these are ellipses. Can you see that is not a circle, it's more of an ellipse. And the same here, you're not. So this, if you're thinking, oh, that doesn't look a perfect circle, it isn't. It's an ellipse. In fact, I've not got it enough that way. It wants to be more like that. So keep moving your arm and keep looking at the direction of those shapes, circles. And correcting as you go along. Again, I've not left enough gap under here. I've not used an eraser, but you could alter things as you went along with your eraser as well. And look at where those eyelashes are attached. They're not attached to this inside, they're attached on the outside edge, and then you get the highlights on the top inside edge. Perhaps overdone it again with the... I think I've not come far enough across with that. To make a pupil bigger in relation to the rest of her eye. I'm going to need to bring that in. So keep looking and keep altering. And that line continues up. That line of the nose, if you think about it, if you feel the side of your face and where your nose and your brow bone and your eye socket all meet, you'll feel that bone go across there. That's a little bit of that I've missed there. Can you see that little shape there I've missed? So it sort of turns over there. So if you were doing this in colour, look very carefully at the colours. Where the blood's nearest to your skin is where it's going to be pinkest. So if you look here, it's very pink in here in the centre corner, and those are reflecting on each other as well because of all that light bouncing around. So there's often quite a lot of pink in there compared to the other tones in the flesh where it might be more yellow. If you look there, it's a lot more yellow than it is pink. I'll just carry that line on. It just looks a bit silly at the minute, like she's not attached to anything. So now I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to go a little bit darker in places, and I'm going to come a little bit lighter in other places with my eraser. I hope that you found that useful. It was just a very quick sketch of mine, but you'll be able to spend a lot more time than that just really observing. Think about where that brow bone is. Look at the shape and depth of the lid. Don't forget that it's coming this way outwards as well as it's going across. In fact, if you look here, there's one or two little lines there, and that's going to help with that as well. But don't, like I said, don't overdo all these little lines in the skin because it will make the person look older than they are. So just be mindful of that and keep those pencil lines moving in the direction that things are going. So whenever you're doing any shading, think about which direction the skin's going in or things are lying in, as well as just it being shadow. Use that to your advantage to make the form and shape of the object that you're doing. Okay, so I'll carry on with this now. Sorry, I just lost that last little bit of film and forgot what I was talking about, but I was just going to say it'd be nice actually to do a full page of practices of eyes. Do some from the side, some even more from the side than this one where you're just catching the edge of that pupil, and some from the front, some older people, younger people, children, different expressions. If you'd get a nice big sheet of paper and have a practice at doing lots of different eyes, some more open, do some closed eyes as well. And it's interesting how even with a closed eye you can still get some expression into that person by getting the way that all the muscles are in the face right, because when we frown or when we smile, everything changes around the eyes. Okay, so have fun with that. Let me know what you think in the comments below, if that was a useful video to you. If you'd like more drawing tutorials, if there's anything else that you would like to learn to draw, let me know as well. So thanks for watching, enjoy the rest of the video, and bye for now.